Blood TV podcast, season 7, episode 3. It's a new college basketball season that's underway, and we're going to dive into the recap of 2 exciting games in the aftermath of the 2024 election. Guys, no politics, no election talk. We're going to talk strictly Duke, Carolina. And first up, we're going to talk about Duke's season opener against Maine. We're going to discuss Cooper Flagg, Con Knipple, the highly anticipated debuts, the team's offensive firepower, and defensive concerns that we may have. Then we're going to shift our focus to Elon and Carolina. We'll analyze the slow start of Carolina, the defensive performances, the key contributions. So grab your favorite drink, sit back, join us as we dissect these games and look ahead to the rest of the season. But before we start, we would love all of you to share this podcast with your friends and like it. The more listens we get, the more in-depth coverage we can offer. So first up, we're going to talk Duke vs. Maine. What's up, Daryl? How are you doing?
Hey, what's up, Haas? I'm doing well, man. I'm doing very well after that game Monday.
There's this guy called Cooper Flagg. There's this guy called, I love his name, Con Knipple. But we're going to start with Flagg. How impressive was Cooper Flagg's performance on day one, first real game against a Maine, and did he live up to the hype, Daryl?
I thought it was a very solid performance from Cooper Flagg. I'm sure a lot of people were disappointed. He was over for 4 from 3, but he showed every bit of the defensive tenacity that I talked about him having and that defensive intensity. And he was a stat stuffer, right? So he had 18 points, but he also had 7 boards, 5 assists, 3 steals, I believe. He was doing everything for the Blue Devils, and he was taking shots. He was missing some shots, but he also was a big facilitator, and he opened up the floor for a lot of his teammates. And I think, as I've said, this team goes as far as he and Con Knipple shoot. But Cooper Flagg, first game, first real college basketball experience, I was very impressed.
Daryl, I was impressed by his athleticism at 6'8",
Yeah.
6'9", 195 pounds.
Yeah.
That's where I was, his length, his ability to get places. What I was not impressed with was his shooting. But the rest of his game, I thought was pretty darn good. So we'll come back to you, Daryl. Carolina versus Elon. Offensive struggles. Will, tell us what the reason behind the slow start on the offense. What happened, Will?
I'm not really sure. I think that we've got quite a few new pieces to this puzzle this season, and it was just one of those where you throw some freshmen out there, you throw some new transfers in there, and everything, and just sluggish, man. Just a sluggish start. But there were some reasons for all of us to be optimistic, I think, as well.
Okay, did you think the sluggish start was the lineup? Starting your guy, Elliot Cadeau, with a 7'4" center and 2 twins that were super athletic. Was it TK and TJ? Don't you think length athleticism kind of slowed that small team down? What do you think?
I don't. We had quite a few points in transition. We had some fast breaks. I think at times we just had some mental lapse. I think this team's going to create a lot of offense from their defense, and we had momentary lapses in our defense. I think Jalen Withers getting the start over a guy like Cade Tyson was huge, because you can kind of match. Obviously it's tough to match 7'4", but Jalen Withers is 6'8". He's got that big athletic frame. He looked good. He was the only guy that we had that had a double-double. I think Cadeau played well. He was 17 and 8. So I just think it was momentary lapses in defense that led to opportunities for him.
Okay, what about the defensive intensity? What did you think about Carolina defense against, what are they, a CAA school? What did you think about that? It wasn't a Power 5 school.
No, they're definitely in the Colonial. I do think that, and obviously the momentary lapses were tough, man. But like we were able to, I think they did pull ahead by 2 or something in the second half. But we had 3 quick stops down the stretch where it led to points in transition, and RJ Davis just kind of did what RJ Davis does, proved why he's one of the best players, maybe the best player in the country. And we went up and never looked back. So I think that substitution that for taking out Jay and putting in a guy like Caden Tyson, who's a little bit better defensively, but maybe not quite there as far as shooting goes. I think that was one of the big things that Hubert did that kind of helped out that defensive intensity.
Will, I don't know if you heard the last pod. I know you were under the weather last week, but the last pod I did say that my prediction with the size, the length, the athleticism, Elon coming to the Dean Dome, which they normally do not come. Yep. I predicted that Carolina would struggle. I predicted Carolina would win, but I thought that they would struggle. But I'm going to go back up to Daryl. Team depth. That's what we're going to talk about, Daryl. With so much talent on this roster, how deep into the roster can Jon Scheyer go? And do you think this is a blessing or a curse for a young coach?
So this season, I think it's a blessing for Scheyer, right? I think that he can dig about 11 men into his bench, and excuse me. I think that I think he pretty much proved it. They proved it as a team on Monday night. You're looking at the returning starters, like I talked about from last year. You got Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor, obviously Cooper Flagg. You got Con Knipple, Common Maluwak. You got Sion James coming off the bench. Big guard, man. I mean, this guy looks like he's bigger than everybody on the floor, and he plays like it as well. He could probably play on the football field too. You got Mason Gillis from Purdue. You got Darren Harris. We didn't even talk last week about Malik Brown, Hassan, but definitely a big man that's a different type of big man for a typical Duke team. And I didn't even mention Isaiah Evans. So I think that for Scheyer this year, I think it's a blessing. I think the talent and the chemistry combined is allowing this Duke team to flourish.
So from my perspective, and we can drill down on this later, I don't think the starting lineup is the starting lineup that I saw the last 2 days ago. I think your 2 guards are Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg. Do you agree with that?
The 2 guards, you said?
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of called Caleb Foster, Tyrese Proctor. I like those as being the 2 guards, but I could accept Con Knipple at the 2.
And I think you could accept Cooper Flagg at the 1, handling the ball, getting into spaces at 6'9", like a 6'9" Magic Johnson, drawing so much attention because he can get where he needs to go, and then kicking to Con Knipple. I see. Hold on. I see Sion James as a starter in the small forward position with Maluwak at 7'2" as your center. And then you can pick your power forward, whoever you want. I would go with Malik Brown, but I think based on what I saw, Tyrese Proctor is not in the starting lineup there. That's what I think. Thoughts?
I think this team, and I think I said this the first episode, is going to be very much positionless basketball at times, right? And I completely agree. Cooper Flagg can run the point. That's going to be a nasty lineup when he does. I just don't think that it's the starting lineup. I think at times, absolutely. But I think that you bring Malik Brown off the bench. He gives you depth at that 5 spot. And I think that Cooper can run the 1 through the 5, right? At times you will see Cooper Flagg play the 5 as well. And that's the beautiful thing about this Duke team is they have depth, but not only depth, but they're a very big team. So they can run a lot of positionless basketball where you see a lot of these players do a lot of different things, and the limitations are endless. Actually, there are no limitations for this Duke team.
Okay, let's talk about offensive firepower, Daryl. Duke scored 96 points in their opener. What does that tell you about offensive things to come?
It tells me they can score the basketball. The sad part about it is they shot 11 for 29 from three, which isn't great for this Duke team. And I think that this team could see eclipsing 100 a few times this season, depending on who they're playing. If this Duke team at their best will score more than 100 points at least three times this year, Hassan. I believe that offensively they were phenomenal at times, but defensively in that second half was probably the story of the half, and if not the game. I think they
Okay,
held Maine to 25% in the second half.
Con Knipple, 22 points. Though most of those threes were Con Knipple. Would you agree?
Yes, and Tyrese Proctor, who you want to sit on that bench, man. I can't believe we're gonna revisit this Tyrese Proctor conversation halfway through the season.
I mean, listen, you can start Tyrese Proctor and you can move Cooper Flagg to the four, Malawak to the five, and the three. You could put Malik Brown in, and then you got a 6'8", 6'9", 7'2" front line. That's like an NBA front line, and then you could have Tyrese Proctor sitting back there with Con Knipple with Caleb Foster coming off the bench. I mean, you can do that.
The sad part is, I don't think that you're wrong, Hassan, and that's the crazy part about this team is that you can throw out 7 different lineups, and you would say, "Wow, that's a really good lineup."
Yeah, I agree. All right, Will, we're back to you.
Yes, sir.
You don't seem like you have the same amount of optimism that Mr. Darryl is.
He shouldn't. He shouldn't. He shouldn't, Hassan.
Freshmen are still freshmen, man. You can build a team around them all you want, but freshmen are still freshmen.
Okay, so let's talk about your freshmen, Will. Key players, were there any standout performances? Who did you like? Who do you dislike? Who surprised you?
Drake Powell surprised me. Giving him 17 minutes off the bench. He only had 5 points, 2 boards. So it's not a stat line that's going to wow anybody. But I do think that if this team is going to go as far as they want to, we're going to need to get contributions from a guy like him. And largely what I saw going into the season that he would be a developmental piece where you'd have to just be patient with the kid and kind of he'll be one of those guys that'll contribute down the stretch, but early on there'll be some growing pains or whatever. And I just think that seeing him get 17 minutes and then hearing old Hubert's post-game presser about guys like Drake and Ian Jackson and stuff like that is promising as hell. So
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Van Allen, Lubin, I liked him.
Yeah.
Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, I liked him. Cade Tyson, I liked all 4 of those guys.
I like him. I like him as well, man. I do think that it was cool seeing 9 guys get at least 17 minutes of playing or double-digit playing minutes. You know, I think that Hubert exploring his options as far as different lineups, rotations, and that sort of thing goes is good against a team like Elon. So.
And then Jalen Withers, I thought him as a stretch 3. Yep. I thought it was good. I thought he was good on the backboard. He added some things that you lost with Armando Bacot. I was very impressed with Jalen Withers, where I felt like he took a growth step. I'm still not sold on the Elliot Cadeau, RJ backcourt. I really believe you can take one of those freshmen and toss them back there, go a little bigger. And then Jalen Washington with 21 minutes, 8 points, not impressed. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that great. It wasn't what you'd want to see. I do think that we'll be okay down the stretch. You know, I'd like to see. I'm not super optimistic about playing Kansas at Kansas on Friday night. But we'll see. I mean, it's still early. It's a long season, so I think that we've got there's a lot to be optimistic about. And I do think the shooting woes will kind of fix themselves if we're going to do anything this season. So,
hey, Will, fill me in. What's Jalen Washington's 3-point percentage so far this season?
He's 0 for 1, man. He's 0 for 1. He's 0 for 1. At
Just
least,
just
at least
curious.
they're
I mean,
at least they're stretching him though, man. At least they're stretching him. You guys gave me shit on the first episode about Elliot Cadeau, and he finished with 17-8. So keep talking. That's fine.
Yeah,
I
but
gave Cano his props last week. I gave Cano his props last week. I said this
but
team would
Okay,
need him this year.
but
okay,
but it took him 32 minutes to get it.
that's fine. I mean, he
I
was our
wasn't.
second. He was our second highest score in the game.
Yeah, but
So
I wasn't super excited about him. I wasn't.
we only shot 40%. I mean, if we're gonna we were 13 of 32 and we still put up 90. I
He
get that it's Elon, but I mean, if you shoot that poorly and you're still dropping 90 points, you're creating opportunities with your defense. I think that having a three, I mean, we're small. Like we've still got James Brown, who's 6'10", who didn't see a lick of playing time, and then Ty Claude, who had the eligibility issues, and didn't see the floor either. So we've got two more guys coming off the bench that could create opportunities for guys like Cadeau and Trimble as well. So
Well, I felt like Cadeau did well when Van Coleman was off the field. When
yeah,
Van Coleman was in the paint, Elliot Cadeau struggled. Like when they were big, Elliot Cadeau struggled. Most of those points came when he was off the court. Okay. I like Ian Jackson. I like a little bit bigger
I
guy.
do too. Yeah,
I think you can get Ian there quicker. Jalen Washington, from my perspective, Hubert should have developed him a little bit more last year and got him more touches on the ball so he could come in.
he needs to play bigger.
Yeah, he needs to play bigger. He's play small. And
Yep.
Then Alan Lubin at 6'8", 6'9", I
Yep.
actually liked him. I actually
Yeah.
liked him. I think he's just short of minutes. He got 17 minutes, 4 points, but I liked his size in there. And you know, I'm a guy who wants to go big, and for me, I feel like you could run that backcourt with Ian in the small forward and have Seth Trimble and RJ in the backcourt, and I think you would get exactly what that, and you'd be a little bit longer.
I think as the season progresses, though, I do agree with you on the size aspect of a lineup, but I do agree with, or I do think though that as these guys figure out their shooting woes, I mean, Caden Tyson's a 46% 3-point shooter for his career, and he was terrible from beyond the arc. He didn't make a single 3-pointer and only had 2 points in the game.
Yeah,
So I think that I do think that as these guys work on you figure out these shooting woes, we can play around with starting lineups a little bit more. I do think that a bigger lineup with Seth and Ian, and then you throw Jalen Withers, who I really, really like. Dude's freakishly athletic, and then Jalen, and even if you want to go Van Allen as your 4 or 5, you can swap those two guys out.
yeah,
And
and
I
I
think
just
this
don't think that Washington plays like he's 6'10", 6'11". I think he plays like he's 6'8".
he doesn't. He's got that European feel to him where he
No,
plays outside
he
in.
has a coach babied him, needed
Yeah.
him in the weight room and throwing him around. And we're gonna see what that looks like against Kansas. Daryl, defense. We talked about offense. While the offense looked sharp, were there any defensive lapses that needed to be addressed, Daryl?
I actually the first half was probably a mediocre half on the defensive end, but overall, I think that the second half especially, Duke looked really good on the defensive end. I mentioned earlier, Maine shot 25% from the field in the second half. Now there were, in my opinion, some lapses on the boards. I think Maine had like 9 offensive rebounds. Uh, that can't happen against the better talent, the more prestigious programs, the Carolinas, the Kansases, the Kentuckys, right? But overall, defensively, Duke looked pretty good. I think that Cooper Flagg, as you talked about earlier, super athletic. Kaman Malawach, super athletic, very long. They have some interior. Malik Brown, who we haven't talked a lot about from Syracuse, also a very good defensive presence. These guys in the paint especially look really good. So I think as long as these bigger guards that they have on the perimeter can hold their ground, the paint is protected. It's gonna be on the guards this year from the perimeter, I believe, to hold most teams to the least amount of points that they can. I think that most teams are gonna have to live by the three and die by the three against this Duke team, but they do have to get it together on the boards.
Okay. Will, coaching adjustments, what adjustments did Coach Davis make to turn that game around? Because it got close. I mean, Elon was close to pulling ahead.
They were ahead.
Times. And what key players did you really, really like that weren't there last year?
I really liked Cade Tyson. I thought that the adjustment that Coach made in the second half when Elon actually they did take the lead by 2. They shot over 50%, and Coach called a timeout and threw Cade Tyson in for Jalen Withers, who had a great first half, not as great second half. I thought that defensive adjustment was huge, and I think that I've said it before, man. If this team's gonna do what we think they can, we're gonna have to rely heavily on our defense and our transition game.
Quick question: Cade Tyson, can he start on this team? Yes or no?
I don't think right now. Ask me in a couple of weeks, man. Ask me in a few more episodes.
What about 6'6" Drake Powell?
I think he could. I don't think he's in a place where he should be starting right now, but he's a great depth piece, and he provides. What's up?
So let me ask you a question. Like, he is a 5-star recruit, 6'6", 195. Daryl, 6'6", 195, almost 200 pounds, 6'6". Sounds like an NBA body, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that should be a one and done body for sure.
That's a one and done body. So what's the difference between what Hubert's doing and what Shire's doing? Why can't Drake Powell start now? That's my question.
I just think that, I mean, we're small. This team is small, and give Drake Powell. We're talking about this one game into the season. I think that let's see how he plays against a powerhouse. Like, we've got Kansas and Alabama as 2 of our next 5 games. That's the number 1 and the number 2 teams.
But we're talking about Cooper Flagg and Constantinople one game into the season as being the best players on that team.
That's totally fine. We got RJ.
Your 5-star recruits can't do that?
I think they can. I just don't know.
Okay, Daryl, come on. Talk to me. What's wrong with Drake Powell?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I think the problem is that they're so used to having 10-year starters at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with talent when it comes in the first year, and their elite talent. In all seriousness, though, I do believe that traditionally for Carolina, it's longevity, right? You build, outside of in my opinion, your anomalies like your Harrison Barnes, even Kobe White, who really kind of came out of nowhere to perform the way that he did. For the most part, you build at Carolina, right? You earn your stripes at Carolina. I think that Drake Powell and Ian Jackson will probably have to earn their stripes, and it's just a part of the program. Duke has become a traditional one and done program overall, and more closer to one and done than Carolina, right? So I think that Drake will have to earn his stripes. Khan and Cooper really benefit from Duke just having the most recent history of coming in, showing out, getting out.
Okay, so Will, let me just tell you, 24/7 Sports has Drake Powell as a 5-star recruit, rated a 98.
Yeah,
right?
I get it.
Small forward guard, right?
Yep. Yeah, he's got it.
Why do you think he should sit back for an Elliot Cadeau when you could have RJ in the point, have him in the 2? RJ started out as a point guard. Have him in the 2, have and then build a bigger team. I think there's a bigger team for Carolina to build.
I think this team is unlike a lot of other teams we've seen at Carolina. We don't have Baycott here for his 11th year, as Daryl so eloquently put it. I think that with ESPN, I mean, the difference is you've got a guy like Cooper Flagg, who ESPN is deeming as the next generational talent and all that. These kids are still 17, 18 years old. And I think as the season progresses, Drake Powell and Ian Jackson are both going to get starts. They're both going to get plenty of minutes. But if you look at it, these guys, I mean, in 17 minutes of game time, he only shot 25%. If that's great that he was a 5-star, is a 5-star recruit, but at the same time, we're going to have to get these shooting woes figured out. I mean, we had moments of greatness or whatever you want to call it, but from an offensive standpoint, that Elon game wasn't all that, and I think that Drake's going to have to. He'll figure it out. I'm not saying he won't start. I just think that right now, I would take RJ Elliott and Seth over him.
And you know what? I would take RJ, Seth, Ian. I would throw Ian out there. I would throw Drake Powell out there, and I would throw what's his name from last year. Jalen Withers out there. That would be my starting. Yep. That would be my starting 5. And I'm going shooter in. I'm going to have a shooter in RJ. I'm going to have a penetrator that can penetrate on anybody in Seth Trimble. Then I'm getting my freshman on the floor, right? Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, 6'6", 6'4", NBA size guard forwards, right?
Yep. So that's
the type of athleticism that Hubert Davis needs to play with to get it done. And then I'm throwing in Van Allen and I'm throwing in Jalen in the center. Daryl, what are your thoughts on that?
We talked to Will kind of briefly said that Drake Powell shooting 25% is gonna have to get it together and learn. I think that Hubert's probably gonna have to learn, man. These guys are not accustomed to coming off the bench. And I think sometimes coming off the bench, coming into the game cold when you're so accustomed to being the guy, being in the game from the jump, taking more shots, it takes a while to get a rhythm and to learn how to come off of the bench. I do believe inserting these guys into the starting lineup, Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, will allow them to some comfort, right? They're more accustomed to that situation, and I think that will open up the court for the RJ Davises, who's going to be your scorer. And I think Drake's going to be the second best player on this team this year. But Hubert's going to have to learn how to use these guys and utilize his talent.
And Drake is going to the NBA. Ian Jackson's going to the NBA. RJ might go to the NBA. Okay. Withers definitely is going to go to the G League. But I'm thinking Carolina should get their NBA guys on the court, let them work it out. They were 5-star players because they were 5-star players.
Duke Carolina fans, download Duke Carolina, the Blue Blood Rivalry film on iTunes or Apple TV or wherever you get your VOD downloads.
Hey, Queen, you know you my guy, right? I'm always putting for you. Tonight, when you step on the court, I step on the court too. And we in it.
There's only 2 games that matter. It's the North Carolina game at Duke and the Duke game that's at North Carolina.
When we wake up on game day, there's a knot in my stomach. We've been up since 6 a.m. this morning watching recorded Duke Carolina games.
I watched the Rivers shot
about 15 times.
Yeah. Rivers on his own. Yes, that's the buzzer.
We're here for the Duke game.
And it is 10 hours and 9 minutes until game time.
The Blue Devils win 85-84.
Nothing better than North Carolina and Duke. It is the best rivalry in all of college basketball. Hall of Fame coaches, great players, and usually so much at stake.
And that's it. Carolina has won it. The fans have as much to do with the rivalry being great as the players and the coaches.
It's 5 hours before game time.
Well, there's no question that the rivalry is there every day in our community.
Can you imagine what it would be like around here if people didn't have it? It would be terrifying.
We are 30 minutes away from tip-off.
It's one of the most exciting events you can be a part of, and I still say it's not the biggest rivalry in college basketball. It's the biggest rivalry in all of sport, bar none.
It's game time! 5-star player. Daryl, moving forward, which players do you think are going to make the biggest impact for Duke, and what are Duke's season expectations? And do you see a Final Four run? Because I'm going to go there, Daryl. A Sweet 16 run, Final 8 run, ACC championship. What do you see?
So the player with the most impact on this Duke team this year is going to be Khan. I've already pegged him as
Say
White
his whole name,
Smoke.
Daryl. Say his whole name.
Khan White Smoke Knipple. You know, that guy is on. He's
Put
on
some
fire,
respect
man.
on that name, man.
I'm trying to tell you, Khan White Smoke Knipple.
Okay.
That dude is on fire. And I keep giving you the Grayson Allen comparison. He's taller, right? But he's a sharp shooter. He's coming off these screens. I don't know if you saw the one play, but Malik Brown loses the ball in transition, and he might have gotten the assist for it, but he loses the ball in transition. Khan picks it up, fires it, gets fouled, and drops the bucket, man. And that's a bad boy. But I think Caleb Foster, who I've mentioned a few times over the last couple episodes, is an X factor. He's a primary ball handler for this team, and he is going to be like I said, he's going to be the X factor. He's gonna have to be a facilitator. He's gonna have to be a shooter at times, but he's gonna be one of the returners from last year who have the experience they're gonna need going into these games. The Duke Carolina rivalry, the ACC play, they're gonna need Caleb Foster to step up big as they get deeper into the season. And by deeper into the season, I mean a national championship run. Hassan, book it, baby. These boys going to the ship. They going to the ship. What? They going to the ship.
Didn't you say that last season too?
Hey, Will, we're not on last season anymore, brother.
Well, I think this team is better than
just
last season. I don't think Caleb Foster starts on this team. I mean, I think guys from last year, I don't think they even start on this team, but that's just my opinion. Will, let's go with Carolina. Big game next week.
Yeah.
What do you see as key takeaways as you prepare? I believe it's Kansas, right?
Yep. We got Kansas at Kansas on Friday, which Kansas is the #1 team in the country, man. They're going to be it's going to be a tough test for us. I'm excited to see how Drake Powell and Ian Jackson play against in a primetime game in a hostile environment. The Fog is one of the toughest places outside of Cameron, and those are the top 2 toughest places to play in the country. So I'm excited to see how these young kids rebound from last game and move forward in a tough test, man. I'm looking forward to see how we play and how we match up defensively. Again, I've said it, man. When you're a small team, you have to rely heavy on shooting, defense, and transition game. And that's exactly what we are. We're a small team. Our biggest guy is 6'10". Teams like Elon have a 7-footer.
7'4", Will, to be exact.
7'4". My bad.
Coleman.
My bad. Guy's a tree.
And his aunt works at Carolina in the sports department.
Oh wow, does she?
And she's 6'2". She told me she could make a 7-footer. She told me that.
That's crazy. Yeah, so I think that it'll be interesting to see how the game goes. I think RJ is going to need to step up. I think Cadeau is going to have double-digit assists. We're going to need a guy like Jalen Withers to not have as poor of a second half as he did in this previous game. But yeah, I think this is a good building block.
Okay, so as we enter the preseason or the beginning of the season, and we approach December for ACC season, what players do you think are going to be at the forefront of this Carolina team, Will?
The obvious answer would be RJ Davis, the reigning ACC Player of the Year, one of the best guards in the country. I do think if we're gonna do anything down the stretch in conference play, we're gonna need our freshmen to step up. Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, guys like that, and then I know you don't like him. I know you want us to go big, man. But Elliot Cadeau, he's got to be a guy that's gonna have to contribute if we're gonna make any type of run.
I like him. I just don't think he starts. I think he's a good point guard. I don't think he's athletic enough to play the game that he really wants to play. And the game he really wants to play is to hop inside. And I feel like Seth Trimble can do that for you. I think he has that athleticism. But also,
I do.
Go ahead.
I do think, sorry to cut you off, I do think Seth Trimble is the more athletic of the two. But I mean, if you look at the minutes breakdown versus assists and points, Elliot Cadeau played 2 more minutes. They both got 30, 32, and 30. And Seth Trimble only had 3 assists. So I do think that
because he doesn't have the ball in his hands, Will.
But I feel like a guy like Cadeau is a better facilitator than a guy like Trimble. Trimble's looking to gash and take it himself, where I feel like you need a guy like Cadeau who can dish it to RJ, dish it to Seth, even Jalen, anybody like that. So that's one guy that I think if this team's going to make a run, man, I think we need him to step it up.
So, as a coach, I would be looking out for NBA future players, and I don't think that RJ can make it in the NBA as a 2. But I do think that RJ can make it as a 1. I think he is a point guard. I think he's
got a good enough shot as well.
And he's got a quick release. Yep. And I think his handle is good enough. So I personally think that you can get Ian Jackson on the pitch, right? On the pitch. I think that you can get Drake Powell on the pitch. And I think you can get Seth Trimble. And that's an athletic team. That's a team that I think that can guard a Duke team that's super athletic. And then I think you bring in Cadeau to do what he does when those guys need breaks, right? So is RJ a 2-guard in the NBA? The answer is 100% no. In the G League, yes. As a point guard with a quick release, I think if you can get him back in his natural position, I think he could make it to the NBA. I really do. And I think
RJ will be a Taiwanese all-star.
As a 2-guard, but as a 1, he might have a chance. And then Seth Trimble will cause problems because of his athleticism, where I think Elliot Cadeau is like a race to the bottom, right? I don't think he's a bad player, but I don't think he's good enough to compete with the Kansases, to compete athletically with the Duke. So we're going to go over to Duke. Daryl, real quick. What are your expectations? How do you think the Duke Carolina game will play out? And then, Will, I'm going to give you a shot at the same question. But Daryl, go ahead and take it.
So I mentioned last week that I thought Duke was going undefeated in the regular season, Hassan. So obviously I think the Duke Carolina games, both at Cameron and at the Dean Dome, end up with a Duke win. I think that Duke has too much firepower for the Tar Heels this year. We talk about 7 different scorers that they have who could probably start and be the second leading scorer after RJ Davis at Carolina if they were playing at Carolina. And so I think that this team is, and Will mentioned last year's team. Last year's team was, I think, overhyped. This team is exactly what people have pegged them to be. And they may be better than most people think that they are because they came in with the number 7 ranking, right? There's no way that you look at this team and think they're the 7th best team in the country. They are the elite. They are the best team. 10th. Thank you, Will, for the clarification. That's even worse. That's even worse.
I had to get a jab in there.
No, I mean, yeah,
it might be the
15th
best team in the country, man.
The point stands that the critics, the voters, they clearly don't know what they're doing. And they made it a clean house if they're watching this team and think that they're just a top 10 team in the country. This team at the worst is a top 3 team in the country.
Wow.
No, look, Will, I'm just talking about the eye test. I don't know what the coaching is going to be like. I think the biggest problem at Duke is the depth, right? Is the biggest problem. Like how big that team is. Are there enough minutes for all those guys? Are people going to get upset that they didn't get the minutes that they thought they were going to get? And Concanoople, I had never really heard of him before I saw him. And
White Smoke.
I mean, he might be ACC Player of the Year. And on the Carolina side, I'm gonna let you go at that same question. Will, go ahead.
I think that I think we'll split with Duke. I really do. I think that
he says he's gonna blow you out, and you say you're gonna.
That's totally fine.
He can't say
thinks
anything.
man thinks
he
that
struggled to say that there, Hassan, didn't he? Struggle.
Man thinks that Sid from Toy Story is one of the best players on his team. So that's totally fine. I just aged myself with that one too. That's the kid that makes all the deformed toys for you youngins who don't remember that movie.
We all on the same page, brother.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll split, man. I think that it was against Elon, but we shot 40% and still put up 90. This team's super athletic that we've got. Yeah, the Duke might have the size, but their depth is going to be an issue. If anybody gets hurt, it's a long season. I think the key contributors from a depth standpoint are going to be an issue for Duke down the stretch, if there are any issues at all.
Have you looked at this lineup, Will? Have you seen this roster?
It's totally fine. You're relying on Tyrese Proctor, man. How much did you talk about him last season? I get it's not last season. Totally understand. But we sat and blew smoke up Tyrese Proctor's ass all last season, and the guy was trash. The guy was trash. You know, Will, he's your best guard. Get out of here, man.
You know the sad part though, Will. The sad part is he's not the best guard on this team, right? He's just the guard that's the returning guard. So Shire's going to give him some minutes. He's going to let him start. But you're talking about Mason Gillis from Purdue. You're talking about Sion James from Tulane. You're talking about Darren Harris, another freshman that we haven't talked about yet. You're talking about a bunch of people that I could name. Isaiah Evans, who also was a 5-star recruit, Will. Not sure if you're familiar with him, but he doesn't even play. He played like 3-5 minutes, something like that this past game. And this guy's a 4 or 5-star recruit coming out of high school. This team, depth is not where this team lacks. If you want to talk about, I don't know what you could talk about. I mean, you can make you blow smoke up my ass.
The issues with John Shire, we talked about all last season, have been his ability to get minutes to these divas that you guys have, these 5-star recruits, right? Are these head cases going to sit on the back of the bench while he only runs 6 or 7 guys in conference play, and then he ruins these kids' confidence? And that's why I think we can split with you guys. If Hubert starts 9 guys and rotates them in and out, we're athletic enough that we could steal a win, man. Everybody gets up for that game, and I do think we could split with you guys. Yeah, your ceiling is higher than ours at this point after one game. But man, I think I don't see any reason why we couldn't play right there with you.
Yeah. So, Will, I think Hubert is going to be a project where when you get to March, will you be better? Yes, you will be. But you've got 2 5-stars. You haven't had 5 stars in a long time. I say get them on the court. They're 5 stars because they're a reason. There's 5 stars. Get them on the court. Get them to the NBA because that's what they want to do. And a guy like Elliot Cadeau is not going to the NBA. He's not athletic enough. He doesn't shoot well enough. His release is too slow. There's so many reasons why he's just not going to go there, right? So I say make him into what he is a backup. He's a backup. In my opinion, Elliot Cadeau is a great backup guard that is not going to the NBA. You have 3 guys on that team that I see could go to the NBA, and that's Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, and RJ. And RJ needs to go back to the 1 so that he can do his thing. And then you need to put Ian Jackson or Drake Powell at the small forward or the 2, or put them both at the small and the big forward, and to get Seth Trimble on the field.
You're absolutely correct as far as those 3 being as close to locks to make it to the NBA as we have on this roster as it stands today. I do think that as we progress throughout the season, Drake and Ian are going to work their way into the starting lineup. They're going to see significant playing time. I think that we're 1 game into the season. We got Kansas coming up. I think Ian Jackson matches up well. Drake Powell matches up really well against a team like that. And how many times in the last 10, 15 years have we seen guys play their way into the NBA? mean, Brady Manick made a G League roster.
Oh, stop!
He wasn't.
Stop.
He was mediocre at best. Had a great run in the tournament. I'm saying,
Will.
See, when you do
how many
that,
minutes does Brady Manick have in the league?
None. But what I'm saying is that's the first one that comes to mind. There have been throughout all over college basketball. There have been guys that have made runs that haven't gotten much burn early and have made runs in tournaments and all that, and built up their draft stock. So what I'm saying is a guy like Jalen Withers, who you said is a G League talent, guys like that, let's get everybody, let's get as much as we can. Yeah, Elliot Cadeau might not make the NBA. Probably. Chances are he's never going to make the NBA. But he's a good college player. And I keep going back to him. And Seth Trimble might not make the NBA either. Probably won't. He's probably
he will not. He's not good enough.
But these guys are good college players, and you got to do what's going to help you right now. And we can talk about the NBA all we want, but this is college basketball.
Okay, so can I just, remind you of Carolina basketball teams? 1996, Antoine Jamison, Shammond Williams, Vince Carter, Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Okay, that was 3 guys off of that team, right? Let me take you back. Let me take you back to 1983. Okay, 1983 Carolina basketball roster: Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Brad Daugherty, Kenny Smith. That's 4 Hall of Famers. Okay.
Yeah,
4.
the game
Okay,
now
no,
is different than it was back then.
Hold on. Can I take you to 1995? Brendan Hayward, Shammond Williams, Jerry Stackhouse, Vince Carter, Scott Williams. I mean, there's like 6, 7 NBA guys on these teams.
Yeah,
right?
05,
Yep.
09,
Jeff
11,
McGinnis,
13,
Jeff McGinnis,
17.
Rasheed Wallace in 1995.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're doing here, Will, is you're taking a brand and you're diminishing the brand by saying he made the G League, comparing Brady Manick to the history of Carolina basketball is
That's not what I did at all.
That's what you did.
I didn't compare him to the history of basketball. I didn't compare him to the history of Carolina basketball. What I'm saying is this game we can talk 05, we can talk 09, we can talk 11, 13, 17, all these great Carolina rosters throughout history. This game is different than it has ever been right now with NIL, transfer portal, this, that, and the other. And those guys were able to develop. Yeah, they were 5-star recruits that came in and ended up being Hall of Famers and having long, solid great NBA careers. But this, in no way, shape, or form am I diminishing the history of the program. What I'm saying is in the game that it is today, a guy like Brady Manick, who had a mediocre college career at best, played his way and ended up making the Summer League and the G League and all that. And I'm saying right now that we're talking college basketball, we're not talking the NBA.
Okay,
so,
but
yes,
here's
Powell and Ian Jackson are 5-stars who will make the NBA.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Will, is that is okay when you went the Roy Williams route. And Daryl, jump in here wherever you want. When you're getting 3- and 4-star recruits that you're saying, yeah, we're going to coach them up, right? I'm all for 3- and 4-star. But when you have 5-star guys with NBA bodies, I say get them on the floor, because here's why. If you can get them the minutes, you can get there. The probabilities of you winning a national championship aren't great, period. Just even if you have the best team, the probabilities of Duke winning the national championship may or may not happen, but you can get those guys enough minutes to develop so that you can get them to the NBA. So now next year you can bring in 3 more 5-stars, right?
Yeah, so
that's why I'm saying. Go ahead, Darryl.
We're talking historically great rosters, right? We're mentioning all these Carolina lineups, man. Those are some great teams, and so we might as well mention another one, and that's the one of Cooper Flagg, Con Knipple, Darren Harris, Tyrese Proctor, Isaiah Evans, Mason Gillis, Sion James. These guys. Well, I think to Hassan's point, we talked about it earlier, you got to put the talent on the floor. Carolina's not accustomed to having 2 5-star recruits recently who are league bound, who are immediately NBA bound, who are exceptional extremely talented players on the next level. And so traditionally, like I talked about earlier, these guys have to build their stripes. They have to earn their stripes on a Carolina squad. But this year, considering that you don't have a lot of returning players who are elite, I think that it doesn't hurt to throw in the Drake Powells, the Ian Jacksons, and give these guys starting minutes early so they can build themselves up. So by the time you get to ACC play and the time you get to tournament play, they're not looking to build their NBA profile. They already have it. They have it from high school. These guys have the talent to put on the floor as well, to put the ball in the basket. And if you don't put it out there, Duke's going to kick your ass twice a year. Twice this year.
Duke's not going to kick our ass twice this year, and that's cute that you think so. But
3 times maybe. You might be right. It might be three times.
Okay, cool. All right, usual bet.
Yep, and Will,
Absolutely.
The other piece to that is you're looking at the NBA, right? And there's a show on Netflix. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's got the new stars of the NBA. And Jason Tatum is one of them. He's a Duke guy, right?
Starting five, Hassan.
Starting five. It's called the starting five. He's a Duke guy.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a Carolina guy there? And the reason is because of recruiting, right? And if from an NIL perspective, Carolina is serious about competing, you've got to pay, right? You've got the fan base. You got to pay for the players. And if you're going to pay for the players, to get 5-star recruits on your field, you paid for them.
So this goes back to the conversation. I got 2 things. First one, before I go the opposite direction, is this is a new look Carolina team. We're smaller than we've been in recent memory, and we're going to have to play a different style of game: transition, defense, shooting. So in a game that's completely different than what we've played the last 3 or 4 years, you've got to run your veterans out there before you run the freshmen so that they get how this team is going to operate this season. That's it. I'm not saying that Drake Powell and Ian Jackson aren't going to get starting time. I'm not saying they're going to get a ton of playing time. Hell, I hope they each have 20, 25 minutes against Kansas. That would be a really good sign for us against a team like Kansas, who's really, really tough in a hostile environment. The second thing being, we keep talking about NIL and we keep talking about transfer portal and all the one and dones and the 5 stars, and that's totally fine. But this podcast is about college basketball as it stands today, and that's part of it. Yeah, but if you go back 15, 20 years in the history of the one and done, how many times we have more national championships than Duke does? Yeah, you got more NBA.
I don't know that you have way more national championships than Duke does.
I just said more. I just said more.
The 6th championship in 1934, whatever it was.
No, I'm just saying in the history of the one and done since the.
You said in the last 20 years. How many national championships does Carolina have in the last 20 years?
I mean, the last 20 years we've got the 05, 09. We've got 3.
Right.
No, you have one more. You have one more than Duke. You have one more.
That's fine. So it's our recruiting style. Yeah, would we like to see more superstars from Carolina in the NBA? Yeah, sure.
And the answer is Will.
I would also like to see. I'm also pretty okay with having more national championships than that ugly ass school down the road.
But Will, the answer is UNC was the Dallas Cowboys of college basketball in the 90s. Okay. And it's not that anymore, right?
Yeah.
Brands change over time if they're not taken care of.
Yeah,
the reality is that
in the last 30 years,
that more money flows when you have alumni like Michael Jordan. You have alumni that are making it to the league, when your guys are getting first of right on TNT after college, right? Not only are they dominating college, but they're getting opportunities in television, movies. Those are the things that are going to keep your NIL branding high from a corporate perspective, from a fan base perspective. And Carolina, I'm going to conclude with this, needs to get those 5 stars on the court, needs to get them playing, needs to get those guys to the NBA so that they can get more. And I want to start by saying, Will, thank you for being back.
Absolutely.
Thank you for feeling better. You were amazing. Daryl, you're always amazing. Thank you for sitting in there last week with me, pounding it out about Duke and Carolina.
It was fun. Welcome back, Will. Welcome back, brother.
Appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it.
And to all, we could talk about this for another hour, but our hour's coming up. And but next week we'll have more college basketball. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Leave your comments, predictions, talk junk about Daryl and his ugly Duke hat, and talk about Will get in the studio, get off the beach, because you seem to be at the beach every single weekend. This is Blue Blood TV signing off. And as we say, we out. We out, people. Peace, love.
The Blue Blood TV podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, guys, these shows grow when you share them. So we have a great show here. Share them with all your friends. Make them aware of the Blue Blood TV podcast.